Why does the economy go up and down? Why are there cycles? People always say, like, well, it just happens. Well, no. The sun comes every morning. There's a very real reason for that. Most economists say, well, I can't predict anything past the next election. And I'm like, well, then you're only focused on politics. And frankly, politics doesn't matter that most because politicians, like people, react to cycles instead of predicting them. And we've been in a bad cycle since 2008, and that's why governments are printing money like crazy, which is not a good solution. The ups and downs of the economy, I've always predicted. People always thought I was crazy. In the 80s, I got criticized for being too bullish after the long 70s recessions and inflation. Everybody, we'll never get rid of inflation, and we run one recession. I said, no, 83 to 2007 is going to be the greatest boom in history. People thought I was crazy. Well, now I've been saying since 2008, no, we're in a downturn. It's not just the US, Europe, all the developed countries mostly. Yeah. And it's going to be about 2024 until these trends turn up. And all this government stimulus is actually preventing the economy from getting rid of all the bad debts and zombie companies on the rise, companies that are still alive but can't pay their debt service. Debt is higher than ever despite this downturn. The government is printing money to protect the economy from going into a recession, which is exactly what we need. Recessions are the opposite of booms. Stimulus is the wrong solution. When you grow for a long period of time, you're going to have a lot of companies that misinvest and create bad debts. You have to flush those bad debts. It's like going on a diet if you're 300 pounds, or 200 pounds and going back to 160. And then you're healthy and you can grow again. We have boom and bust cycles. My demographic said 1983, 2007, baby boom, greatest in history. 2008 into 2023, baby bust. From fewer millennials to spend as much money as the baby boomers. And the millennials will create a boom from 2024 to 2037. Not as long, not as strong as the baby boom. But until we get to there, until we flush all this bad debt out of our economy, we're going to compromise that boom. I'm like, we are killing the next generation, the millennials, because their boom will be compromised by the fact that we won't write off our bad debts and bad companies. Because the government keeps stimulating the economy to prevent a recession. Booms and busts are equally important. Booms last longer than busts historically, but if you don't have recessions, you don't clean out the excesses from the last boom, and you can't boom again. So I think economists are now the stupidest single profession on earth because they think their job is to prevent a recession at all costs. And I'm like, recessions are like the common cold. They keep you healthy. It's not like a flu that attacks from the outside. Common colds you get when you're toxic imbalance, and they make you healthy again. You eliminate your excesses. We need to get rid of all the bad debts from the greatest boom in history so we can have the next boom, which will not be as great, but will be good enough to look a lot better than this. Cycles are inherent in life. If you fight cycles, you're an idiot. I mean, you need to learn, okay, here's a cycle. There's the innovation stage, the growth boom, the shakeout, the maturity boom. This is my 4-stage cycle I use everywhere in economics, in businesses, individual, collective economy. You need to learn to adapt to the cycles. Not what governments are trying to do is prevent a 1930s like shakeout cycle, which will make us healthier again. And what did we do after the 30s? The worst downturn in history. We grew faster than any time in history. Governments are doing the wrong things because they don't understand the economy. But they just printed trillions of dollars in 2 years. $10 trillion fiscal and monetary in 2 years. And they don't understand why we have 9% inflation versus 1%. That was totally artificial. Here's the difference. And this is very important to understand. The long inflation of the 70s was the largest generation, unproductive, young, entering the workforce at great cost to incorporate them, low productivity first. That's what caused, that was natural inflation. We weren't printing money back then, except a little bit in downturn. This printed money is totally distorting the economy and preventing it from recovering from this downturn and the COVID crisis, and we're just going to go into a deeper downturn. Because you know what the truth is? I've been predicting 2008 to 2022 would be a long-term downturn like 68 to 82 and like 29 to 42. It's cycles. Don't fight cycles. Work with them and make them better. If you fight cycles, the cycles are going to kick your you-know-what. Economics is the worst science. Nobody's ever decided, why does economy grow? I'll tell you why it grows, because people are born in generations. Back as far as you want to go, every 35 to 40 years. Those generations enter the workforce at great expense until they do, and then they grow up and they earn and spend more money as they become more productive. And then as their kids leave the nest, they stop spending and slow down and then retire and die. And the problem is governments are fighting this bust instead of working with it. Like if I was in a company and it went down, I couldn't create money like the government does. I would have to cut my expenses, refocus on the best markets, do all this stuff. We're not doing that. We're just doing the same old thing and the economy keeps getting weaker because we're not making the adjustments for the new generation, and we're not downsizing debts that are no longer productive. Yeah, we borrowed a lot of money for good reasons, as any boom. In a bust, all the bad debts go bad, and that clears out capital to invest in the future. We're not doing that. The government thinks they are smarter than the invisible hand, which came from the greatest genius in history in the late 1700s. The real boom peaked in 2007, just as I predicted 20 some years what happened. We went in a deep downturn and governments just went crazy and just printed money, especially the US government. And this entire boom since is totally artificial. Now the stock market's at way new highs when the fundamentals of the economy, which I can predict with my 46-year lag on peak spending, is at the lowest level. This is a huge divergence. Only resolves one way. Stock markets and financial assets prices go down and the economy readjusts to reality, and then we can benefit from the next boom. If we don't, and Japan's already the thing I biggest fear is that we end up becoming Japan. Japan already peaked in their baby boom generation in the late 80s, mid 90s. I saw that coming too. I said Japan's dead. People know they're the greatest country in the world. No, they're at the top of their demographic cycle. We're at the lower end of our baby boom. So that's all happened, and people don't see this is inevitable. That all the growth the U.S. has done, our millennial generation, after this downturn, only brings us back. The best the stock market can ever be is when it was at the top of this boom, and I don't think it'll get back to there. Same with real estate. Real estate, I have a quote: real estate will never be the same when there's more baby boomers dying, because it's a bigger generation, than millennials moving into the peak spending. People, this is so predictable. It's so obvious to me. This is the best real estate prices we may ever see in most developed countries, and people can't buy enough real estate. I'm like, this is going to be a bad deal for a while. And even when it goes down, the difference is every stock boom since the late 1700s, the Industrial Revolution, has taken us substantially higher. Every economic boom. This is going to be the first time in the developed world, not in Asia, not in China, not in India, not in Pakistan, all the growth countries. In the developed world, Europe, we will never see stock prices and real estate prices this high again. I think the stock market's going to fall 86% from the top back in November, 92% from the NASDAQ, 86% from the S&P in January 4th, the NASDAQ peak November 22nd. I think that's going to be a peak we never see, most of us my age at least, for the rest of our lifetime. This is important to know. If you don't know this, you're going to make a lot of wrong decisions, especially investing. This makes 1929 top look like nothing, and let me just give you a statistic to end with. Stocks did not get back to 1929 peak until 1954, 25 years later, after the Great Depression, an 89% crash. That's what I'm telling people to look out for. It may not be 89%, but I'm projecting 86% for the S&P if I'm right. The greatest financial asset bubble. This is everything. This is bonds. This is stocks. This is real estate. This will not end well, and it'll take at least 2 to 3 years to wash this out. That are so overvalued, I can't even compare them to history. They're so overvalued. And all the people thinking, oh, this is just a minor setback. Oh, the government can manage it. The government has printed so much money, they dug their own grave. That's my point of view.